this is Faith at Faith and Books. How are you doing? This is a post for Victober. I'm excited about it because since I've been sick, I'm still not hearing that well. I feel like Victober got delayed a bit. So this is going to be my first Victober posting. And it's, what is today? October 8th. So I got this idea from Katie at Books and Things. She's read a book from every year of the reign of Victoria, the Victorian era, from 1837 to 1901. Although she said 1901, Queen Victoria died very early in the year. So that's sort of, it's kind of being generous to include 1901. But she did her favorite book from each year. Now, some years she'd only read one book. I think she said in one of them she'd read half a book. She hadn't quite finished it. But I'm just going to go through. I thought that was a really good idea for just organizing all the books that I've read from the Victorian era, just to see what I've read. It's a way of just spreading it out and looking at it. So I really like that idea. And I think Kate Howe is also doing something similar. She's going to try to read a book in every year. And I think I might try to do that too. So while I was sick, instead of actually reading, well, I did do some reading, but not a lot. I decided to organize all my books according to the years they were published. So this took quite a while, and I have very, very messy notes, but I'm going to go through as quickly as I can, but maybe mention a few things about each book, to tell you about all the Victorian novels I've read. So I include novels, I include a play, and I include a little bit of poetry, and I include short stories. That's probably cheating, but if I read a short story that was published in a particular year, especially Elizabeth Gaskell, I've read a lot of her short stories, then I'm including that as well. So it's just, to me, it's just sort of a broad view of everything I've read that's Victorian. Okay, so in 1837, that's when we're starting, the Pickwick Papers. I just read that a couple years ago. In fact, I listened to it, and I do not have a hard copy, and I want to have a hard copy of all the Dickens I've read, so I do want to get that. Anyway, 1837, the Pickwick Papers. 1838, right now, wait a second, I made this stack. Right now, here, let me move these books. Right now, I'm reading Nicholas Nickleby. I was going to listen to this on audio, but because my ears are so bad, I don't really want to put anything on my ears. Like, I don't want to put my earphones on, and I'd have to turn it up really loud. So I bought I like to have a hardcover of everything I'm listening to on audio. I love these Dover thrifts. They're so nice and floppy. The print, though, is a little bit light, so I have to sit under really good light. But anyway, I started reading Nicholas Nickleby. I've only gotten through the first chapter. But this is something I'm not planning to finish in Victober. I'm going to finish it in December. As long as I have it finished by Christmas, I'll be happy. So anyway, so Nicholas Nickleby, I am working on. I haven't read it, but I'm working on it. So that's 1838. For the years 1839, 1840, 1841, and 1842, I have not read anything. 1843, I read, why did I do it this way? I did like the opposite. I stacked my books the opposite of the way I should have. A Christmas Carol. So I remember seeing the Mr. Magoo cartoon adaptation when I was really little. I remember my father reading this out loud to us, maybe when I was 9, 10, 11, something like that. And I know I read it myself in my teens at some point. So yeah, Christmas Carol. 1844, I don't have anything. 1845, I have The Cricket on the Hearth, which is another Dickens novella, Christmas novella. I would like to read all his novellas, Christmas novellas and short stories. I've read that twice. I know it's on my Kindle. In 1846, okay, in 1846, I've read Rebecca and Rowena by Thackeray. So a long time ago, I tried to read Vanity Fair, and I didn't get very far. I don't think I understood it. I didn't get the humor. I think I was too young. I want to try it again. I know they're doing a group read of it right now, but I just can't fit it in. But I did, many years ago, I did come across the novella, or maybe it's just a long short story called Rebecca and Rowena by Thackeray. It is a spoof on Ivanhoe, which I know Ivanhoe because I've read it a couple times. So I thought it was really funny and insightful. And yeah, so it made me like Thackeray, and I should try him again. I really should. The other thing I wanted to show you from that same year, 1846, is, I really didn't think, oh my gosh, I'm knocking things down. I really didn't think when I stacked those books, is The Book of Nonsense came out. Now, I had this as a child, and I used to pore over it with these crazy illustrations. This is a very old book. And yeah, so I figured I'd mention that too, from 1846. Okay, 1847, that was a banner year. There was Jane Eyre, Agnes Grey, Wuthering Heights, all came out. I've read all of those. I've read Jane Eyre maybe 5 times, Agnes Grey a couple times, Wuthering Heights a couple times. And then another book I've read from that year is The Children of the New Forest by Frederick something Marryat, Maryatt or something like that. I have a couple of books on this list by him. Yeah, Children of the New Forest. So 1848, Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell. I don't have anything for 1849. 1850, David Copperfield. 1851, the only thing I have is a short story by Elizabeth Gaskell called Disappearances. That was a spooky one. 1852, another short story by Elizabeth Gaskell, The Old Nurse's Story. 1853, this was a good year too. Bleak House, I've read Bleak House, Cranford, Ruth by Elizabeth Gaskell, and Villette. So, and I have to say, I couldn't stand Villette. If you compare the character of Ruth with the character of whoever the main character was in Villette, vastly different personalities. I really couldn't stand that one. Okay, so I read 4 books from 1853. 1854, I don't have anything. 1855, I read Callista by John Henry Cardinal Newman. It's a historical fiction set in North Africa in like maybe the 3rd or 4th century. The Warden by Anthony Trollope, and North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. 1856, I've read Little Dorrit, and I just did that last Victober, and The Poor Clare, which is a short story by Elizabeth Gaskell. 1857, I've read The Dead Secret by Wilke Collins. Tom Brown's School Days, and I forget who wrote that. Hugo something. It's like early Victorian. It's like the quintessential boys' boarding school story. It's set in the rugby, the school that invented the game rugby, and I think the name of the school is Rugby. And boy, they had a different way of educating, and the boys were always getting into fist fights and stuff like that. It's great fun. It's kind of the language is a little bit obscure, but I enjoyed it. And then Barchester Towers came out that year, so I've read that. 1858, I've read Scenes of Clerical Life by George Eliot, and Dr. Thorne by Anthony Trollope. 1859, Adam Bede by George Eliot, and The Woman in White by Wilke Collins. 1860, I don't have anything. 1861, Great Expectations by Dickens, Silas Marner by George Eliot, Framley Parsonage by Anthony Trollope, and The Grey Woman, a short story by Elizabeth Gaskell. 1862, Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braddon, and a short story by Elizabeth Gaskell, 6 Weeks at Heppenheim. I remember that one. Okay, and then, now wait a second, I'm losing... okay, I'll figure it out as I go. Okay, 1863, The Water Babies by Charles Kingsley, which was like a fever dream. That was just the most bizarre. I want to go back and reread it because all my only memory of it is how bizarre I found it, how disoriented I was the whole time I was reading it. And also Rachel Ray came out in 1863 by Anthony Trollope. 1864, The Small House at Allington, which was, that's part of the Barchester Chronicles And that might be my favorite one, except for the last one's really good. The Doctor's Wife, which I'm currently reading. It's the group read for this Victober. And The Light Princess, which is a short story by George MacDonald. 1865, I've read Alice in Wonderland. I forgot to look up when Alice Through the Looking Glass was published, which I've also read. And then also Anthony Trollope's Can You Forgive Her? That's for the Palliser series. 1866, I'm currently reading, do I have it? Yeah, I'm currently reading, Linda Tressel. I hope to read it this year. Actually, I'm currently reading Nina Balatka, which is the next year, came out the next year. And then also in 1866, Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell came out. So I've read that. All right, 1867, Nina Balatka, and that's what I'm reading now. And also The Last Chronicle of Barset came out. That's the last book in the Barsetshire series by Trollope. And then 1868, The Moonstone by Wilke Collins. 1869, Phineas Finn, which is the second book in the Palliser series. 1870, I don't have anything. 1871, Middlemarch by George Eliot, and At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. And this was my father's copy of this book, and I've read this now. I read it as a child, and then I read it a couple of times since. So there's another George MacDonald. 1872, A Dog of Flanders, which is a children's story that it didn't end satisfyingly, as I recall. I think I have to reread that. And The Eustace Diamonds, and that is by Anthony Trollope. That's the third book in the Palliser series. 1873, The Princess and Curdie. I'm pretty sure that's the one I read. There's another book by George MacDonald that also has princess in the title. Not The Light Princess. That's like a short story or a novella. And I'm pretty sure I read The Princess and Curdie. But I should look that up to see if I remember the story and if I actually read it. But I know I read another one of George MacDonald's, and I'm pretty sure it was that one. 1874, Phineas Redux, which is another book in the Palliser series by Trollope. 1875, The Way We Live Now. That was the group read last year, and I finally finished it. I had DNF'd The Way We Live Now, and I finally finished it last year. It is not my favorite Trollope. 1876, I have read now, just as of this last January, Daniel Deronda, which was excellent, and The Prime Minister, which is the second to the last book in the Palliser series by Trollope. 1877, where is that book? Black Beauty. And this is the book I read as a child. This was the one, I don't know when I read it. I read it several times too, as a kid. And then I reread it pretty recently, like, by that I mean like the last 10 years or something. Yeah. So yeah, fond memories of that book. 1878, The Return of the Native. And now we're getting into a little bit of Hardy. I'm not a huge Thomas Hardy fan, even though I think he writes beautifully. I don't like his plots. I don't like his worldview, I think. 1879, I don't have anything. 1880, The Duke's Children. That's the last book in the Palliser series, and it makes reading all the other ones worthwhile. It was a very good one. 1881, I just read Dr. Wardle's School by Anthony Trollope not too long ago. 1882, I don't have anything. 1883, Treasure Island. 1884, I don't have anything. 1885, I have King Solomon's Mines by Haggard. Is that the guy's last name? It's an adventure tale. And also, I noticed that A Child's Garden of Verses came out that year. So I have that, and I actually have 2 copies of it. So yeah, that's a favorite. One Victober, I read all those poems. It was really nice. 1886, The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy, and Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. 1887, I don't have anything. 1888, The Happy Prince. Do I have that? Yeah, The Happy Prince and Other Stories. And I have this beautiful little edition. It is so charming. And I read all these stories not too long ago, not too many Victobers ago. 1889, I've read Three Men in a Boat, and I'm going to read Sylvie and Bruno. I'm going to read this one. I'm planning to read it this year. I haven't started that one yet. Where was I? That was 1889. 1890, I don't have anything. 1891, Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I always say that wrong. Tess of D'Urberville, whatever. That was the very first Thomas Hardy I ever read. I think I was in my late teens, early 20s. The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I've read several times, and In the Roar of the Sea by Sabine Baring-Gould, which was an excellent Gothic novel. It really kind of reminded me of Daphne du Maurier writing, really, except it's older than her. Very good novel. I'd recommend that. And also 1891, The Little Minister, which I have this old copy of, and this will always be precious to me because I buddy read this with Janelle of Too Fond of Books before she passed away. So, and that was a reread for me, but I barely remembered anything of it. But yes, absolutely charming. I love it. By J.M. Barrie. This is by the same guy who wrote Peter Pan, The Little Minister. Okay, 1892, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. I'm not a huge Sherlock Holmes person. I've read the collection of his short stories, and I've read, I just read some earlier this month, or yeah, I read one this month, yeah. And then I've also read The Hound of the Baskervilles, but I think that came out in 1904 or something, so it doesn't count. But I don't know. I just never really warmed to Sherlock Holmes the way everybody else seems to. I try, but he's just not my favorite. I've also read The Diary of a Nobody. That came out in 1892. 1893, I don't have anything. 1894, I've read The Jungle Book. Where is that book? I got that as a gift as a child and read it a long time ago. And also I've read Through Russian Snows, which is by J.A. Henty. And he wrote adventure novels for kids. So, and they're very hit or miss with me. I've tried several and couldn't get into them, but I have read a couple by him. He's very good at the setting, the historical setting, and there's a lot of action. So it really appeals to boys, I think. But the dialogue is very wooden, and every character speaks exactly the same. The characters aren't really developed very well at all. But anyway, Through Russian Snows, I remember that one. That was a good one. 1895, The Importance of Being Earnest. That's the play that I've got on here. 1896, A Child of the Jago Jago maybe, by Arthur Morrison. I had never heard of this, and I've never heard anyone mention it. It's a Victorian novel. The Jago was the worst slum in London. It was absolutely horrible. And this guy wrote, it's the story of this young boy growing up, and it's just a tragedy. It's not lighthearted like Dickens or anything like that. It's really much more, I think, realistic. I've never heard anyone talk about it. It was well written. It really held my interest. I thought it was a good book, but it is very tragic. It's a bummer. It's not there's no happy ending here. But yeah, I've never heard anyone mention that in all the Victobers and all the videos that I've watched. But Sean Standfast recommended it, and we read it earlier this year, I believe, or maybe last year. Anyway, 1897, Dracula. 1898, I've read Elizabeth and Her German Garden. I thought I had that book. Oh yeah, here we go. I actually bought this a long time ago at a used book sale and read it. This is a nice edition. And it says it's to Gladys Esther Rising, Bridgewater, and then I don't know what this means. NG? What does that mean? Is that right? New Jersey. Maybe it's in January 20th, 1913. So I bought this I don't know where I bought it, but yeah. So that's Elizabeth and Her German Garden. That's by Elizabeth Van Arnhem. And I've also read The Turn of the Screw a long time ago. I think I had to read it for school. I have vague memories of having to read it for a class at school. And I remember finding it very frightening, but also I really didn't like Henry James's writing style. He didn't. I found him hard to read. 1899, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I've read that a couple of times. Joseph Conrad, I think I would like to read more of his. And then I've also read The Story of the Treasure Seekers by Elizabeth Nesbit. In 1900, I read No Surrender by J.A. Henting. Again, this is he's kind of a boy's adventure writer, historical fiction, and this is set in the uprising of the Vendée during the French Revolution and the Napoleonic years. And then 1901, I don't have anything for those years. So how many years do I not have anything? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I have 16 years in the Victorian era that I have not read anything from. Now that's probably not true because I also have this wonderful book that I got as a child. And it includes all sorts of children's literature. It's a compilation of all sorts of, because, you know, magazines were the big thing, and reprints of little children's books. And if I went through this with a fine-tooth comb, see, they give the years at the end of the book, I might be able to find where I pretty much read something from every year. Now, I'm being really, really loose with this because if it was just novels I was counting, then I'd have a lot more holes in a lot more years that I'd have to fill in. But I'm being really generous with myself because I just wanted to see, I wanted the broadest view of what I'd been exposed to when it comes to Victorian literature. And so I was including children's books, some poetry, you know, that sort of thing. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting in some way. I'm just sort of talking really fast because I wanted to get through all these books quickly. So I hope this makes sense. And I feel kind of rusty at making videos because I haven't really I made a very short one, but anyway, I have to get back in the swing of things. I feel like I'm just sort of off kilter. It's from being sick and then at the same time having a lot going on. So I'm just sort of thrown off. Anyway, I hope you are doing well. I hope you are having a great Victober, and I will talk to you later. Okay, I'm just adding this on at the end because I realized as soon as I finished recording that I had skipped some novels. First of all, I thought that another Frederick Marryat book was on this list, but the only other one that I've read came out in 1836, and that was Mr. Midshipman Easy, which was set in during the Napoleonic Wars in the Navy, which the author did fight in the Navy during that time. And so it's kind of a comic novel. It's kind of a yarn. It's a seafaring yarn. But that was 1836, so it didn't count. I also forgot a couple of George Eliot books that I have read. So in 1862, along with Lady Audley's Secret, and the 6 Weeks at Heppenheim by Elizabeth Gaskell, I also read Romola by George Eliot. And then when was the other one? When was Felix Holt? I also read Felix Holt. Oh, that's was published in 1866. So there's probably others that I forgot. Oh, and I still didn't look up Through the Looking Glass, Alice Through the Looking Glass. Anyway, I think these are I'm going to continue to remember various things. So it's hard. This is not the definitive list, but it really was a fun exercise. I had fun researching and trying to remember and everything. So yeah, so it's a good exercise. So thank you, Katie at Books and Things, for thinking this up. All right, talk to you later. Bye.